There she is. Okay, so this is how to start walking or running this winter. A little free online class. My name is Michelle, and I am the founder of Ceiling Unlimited Health Coaching. And I also have a training group for beginner women runners called Learn to Run Bend. So some of you might have heard about me from those two things. Other people might have heard about me from FootZone, where I worked for 8 years as the training group, events and marketing manager. During the pandemic, all of my public-facing jobs went away from there. And so I had been coaching beginner runners for a long time. And that experience spurred me to get my health coaching certification through Duke University during the pandemic. That was my pandemic pivot. And the thing that got me to that program is that I'm really fascinated by motivation and behavior change. And it turns out that that's what health coaches really are doing, is helping interested folks who know that they need to make some amount of change or want to make some amount of change, help motivate them to do that. It's also maybe relevant that I've been a licensed massage therapist for 20 years. And so I've spent a lot of time around bodies. Hence, like, here we are talking about movement. So, okay, so our turnout tonight is a little bit tiny. We had 9 people sign up for the class and a lot of people who are apparently just waiting for the video, which is great. So Jillian is our online member this evening, so she's going to answer some questions for us that I promise they won't be too hard, Jillian. So my first question is this. You can tell me if this is true or false. All you need to start moving this winter are a plan, motivation, and appropriate gear. So, Jillian, I don't know if you're familiar with the chat function. Over on the right side of your screen there's 3 dots that say more. If you click into that menu, you'll see chat up above, and you can go ahead and chat into the box there. She says, true with a question mark, maybe slightly skeptical. All good. So let's dive in. I actually want to start with gear tonight because that was a lot of what people had questions about, quite justifiably, since it's winter in Bend. I'm going to initially head off the first question that I often get with regards to gear, which is what I think the best shoe is for walking or running in Bend. I get that question because I was at FootZone for a long time, but I'm going to head it off at the pass. My recommendation to find the right shoe for you is actually to go and get fitted. You have a couple great options in town for that. You can go to either FootZone or Bend Shoe Co. or even Birkenstock downtown. The ethos at all of those stores is a great fit process. And so that'll get you either into a great walking or running shoe, or perhaps into a better winter walking boot if you need something like that. So a well-fitted pair of shoes is going to give you the support and the cushion that you need. The sort of professional shoe fitters at those places will be able to tell you if you need something like an insole. They'll be able to recommend great socks and more. Like I said, we've got a couple of great stores in town. It's best to shop local, as always. They tend to have also better return policies. And that will get you into something that will be supportive and cushiony enough for you as you're starting your movement practice. One thing to know about even a great pair of shoes is that they do wear out after a while. A walking or a running shoe is going to get you about 300 to 500 miles. You'll note that you can buy more shoes, but you can't buy more feet. So it's way cheaper to replace shoes. So I would recommend, be thinking about that 300 to 500 miles. For most people, that means somewhere between 6 to 12 months. So you're going to want to put in your budget something like a new pair of shoes about every 6 to 12 months. Okay. Jillian, any questions about shoes before I move on from there? Doesn't look like it. Okay. You can unmute if you want, if you just want to be able to answer. Okay. No questions about shoes. Perfect. Okay. One thing, though, that I wanted to talk about that, again, came up as a question that people asked in their intake forms was basically how to stay upright during Central Oregon winter, which is a great question. So I'll show you my favorite option first, and then I'll hopefully figure out how to screen share real quick so I can show you another one. On days like this where it's nice and warm, you don't have to worry about traction at all. Once it starts to get kind of slick, either on sidewalks or on trails or paths around town, you might want to think about some kind of traction device on the bottom of your shoe. Um, I have what are called, this is a screwed shoe, which sounds kind of funny. It's effectively like a carbide tipped screw that's actually screwed right into the bottom of the sole. The bits on the screws are short enough that they don't obviously come into the shoe itself. And what this acts as is sort of like, it's like studs for your shoes. It's like a studded tire for your shoes. What I love about it is it's always right there. I don't have to worry about it. It feels pretty snug even on ice. The downside, of course, is I don't want to walk on my wooden floors with these shoes, so I have to really remember to take them off. Um, the other thing about it is you can take the screws out of your shoes in the spring if you wanted to, but typically a better idea is to maybe have a pair of shoes that has a little bit of mileage left on it that they're not your favorite, they're not the ones that you use every day, but it's a pair that you can just put screws in and then kind of forget about. I've had that pair for a couple years and I probably run in them like 2 or 3 times the winter in a winter. So it's not, that's not a huge commitment. And so, I just keep those from year after year and then replace the ones that I wear more often. Okay, so that's the studded tire version. Then the other thing that I wanted to show you, let's see if I can screen share here real quick, is, there we go, it's gonna tell me something. Here we go, desktop, share. Uh-oh, this might not allow me to do this, shoot. Oh boy, okay, couple things to do here real quick. Okay, never mind. All right, we're apparently not going to be able to do that. So sorry about that. So instead, here we have a quick question from Jillian. Yeah, so are the studs good for walking and running? And I would say absolutely. I have used them for both things. Like I said, they just give me a little bit more traction underfoot. Where I don't want to use them is actually on a good weather sidewalk. Like then the screws themselves become kind of slippery, right? So you definitely want to use any of these traction devices, either the screwed shoes or yak tracks. That's the next thing I'm going to talk about, on some kind of surface that is slippery, whether that's kind of icy or like frozen snow or soft snow. Okay, so I was hoping to have a picture for you of the yak tracks, but apparently I'm not allowed to share my screen today. So instead, I would recommend that you go and check this out. You can go to yaktracks.com to see them. It's yaktracks.com. What those are, so as I was saying, the screwed shoes feel like studs for my sneakers. The yak tracks feel like chains for my sneakers, and they act somewhat similarly. You actually pull them on. They're like a stretchy rubber band that kind of pulls around the toes and the heel of your shoe. And then they have these coiled kind of springs that wrap around the rubber sort of net on the bottom of the shoe. A lot of folks love these things because they're very easy to get on and off. You don't have to just devote one pair of shoes to being your winter shoe for the season. And again, they're great for both walking and running. Generally, you want to be using them on something that's snowy or icy. My only complaint about yak tracks is that they can fall off. And I have often seen like an orphan pair of yak tracks, or rather a single yak track like sitting next to a trail someplace, and then you get home and you only have one of them and then you have to replace them. So that's, potentially a downside. You can find those though at places like REI or again, like Footzone or any of the local shoe stores. One other interesting possibility with, dealing with shoes in cold weather is that a number of manufacturers are starting to use a different kind of composite in the sole of the shoe that makes them much more grippy on slippery surfaces. There's a running shoe called the Saucony Peregrine. I've actually seen this in action at a running expo where they took the shoe and they put it on basically on a gigantic ice cube, and they showed you how much traction it has. So if you're loving tech or unusual compounds, you might want to check out the Saucony Peregrine. And I think it's starting to show up in boot soles as well. So that's another option. Last little bit about staying upright, you could think about using something like a walking pole or a hiking pole. You'll find those at REI. The intent there isn't to like drag yourself through the snow with your arms. It's more that you've got 3 points of contact at all times. So that sometimes helps people who are dealing with a little bit of balance issue. Okay. Any other questions, Jillian, about just the slipperiness of things? Other ways to cope with that, perhaps? Not at the moment. Okay, perfect. Okay. So continuing on with gear, the key obviously to getting out in winter weather is staying comfortable and safe. So there's a couple, I would say, fairly flexible rules around things like that. The first is that you might want to consider something that I often tell my runners, which is the 20-degree rule. This is going to be different for walkers because the amount of exertion is different. So if I am looking at the thermometer before I head out for a run, and I see that it's 35 degrees, I'm going to translate that to 55 degrees, and I'm going to dress for 55 degrees. So rather than being in a ton of winter gear, I'm going to dress a little bit lighter so that as I'm running, once I get up to my normal running temperature, I'm in comfortable gear. I say that as a person who tends to run kind of warm. I have a runner friend who's from California. She is always cold. And so she needs like I don't know, like a 40-degree rule by comparison where, if it's 45 degrees out, she's really got to dress. Actually, okay, so that's opposite. She needs like a 5-degree rule. She's going to dress as if it's only 50 degrees outside. So she's always wearing a lot more layers. Some of that is about your personal tolerance for varieties of different kinds of discomfort. I hate wearing stuff around my waist, so I'm always going to be kind of cool in the beginning of my run so that I don't have to take layers off during my run. I know plenty of people who are desperate to be comfortable at the beginning of their run, so they're going to wear a lot of layers, knowing that they're either going to tie something around their waist or put it in a little pack. There's no right or wrong with that. It's about your preference. You are going to have to experiment, basically. If you're new to Central Oregon and new to movement in Central Oregon, you're going to find yourself experimenting to get this right. In the meantime, it might be good to have a little pack with spare gear or 4 spare gear with you. The other thing that's a harder and faster rule is the idea of not wearing cotton when you're doing any kind of workout in cold weather. I'm sure you might have heard this phrase, cotton kills, which sounds so dramatic, but the issue with that is that it really, cotton holds moisture and it holds it close to your skin. So you're going to get cold if you get sweaty. A better option is either going to be a synthetic top, some kind of polypro, something like that, or a wool top. You can find this stuff all over town. REI's got it, Target has it, any of the local outdoor stores will have it. There's a huge range of price points on things like that. Synthetic tends to be cheaper than wool. But these are the go-tos for the winter. The beauty of both of those fabrics, wool or synthetic, is that they're going to wick moisture away from your skin and help you stay warmer if you're getting sweaty. Okay. Then as far as gear goes, I got a couple examples of things. I'll just hold them up so you can kind of see. Ideally, your gear is going to be breathable, flexible, and comfortable. And what I mean by that specifically in the winter is I want to be wearing stuff that I can easily move in, not stuff that's going to restrict my motion. So even on a really cold day, I'm still going to be looking for probably layers that I can build up as opposed to like heavy duty gear. So so a good example for that might be when I'm getting ready for like a winter run or walk, I will probably wear something like a nice lightweight wool top next to skin. And then I might go for like a mid-weight layer between my lightweight next to skin layer and a jacket. And then depending on the temperature, I might layer a jacket over the top of that. This is a super duper lightweight windbreaker. You can kind of see how lightweight it is. That's a really typical winter workout schematic for me versus just having a shirt under like a much heavier, thicker jacket. And again, my purpose in that is that I don't want to have to tie stuff around my waist. And I want to have the option to remove layers versus having this big, thick jacket that's going to be really hot after a while and I won't be able to do anything with it. I think the same way for lower body layers. I tend to go one of two ways. On a warm day, I might just wear a fleece lined tight. You can find those around town. That's pretty good for me for like running or skate skiing, like big cardio exertion. Um, if I'm going for a walk or it's pretty cold out, I might think about layering like a long john under some kind of like wind pant or like a lightweight pant that I can fit that layer underneath. So again, I've got all these layers that tend to be breathable. They allow me to move really naturally, and they're super comfortable for motion. Okay. Other things to think about are what I would consider to be like season extenders or maybe temperature extenders. I could go out on all those layers, like in all of those layers, and not wear a hat, and it would really drastically change how warm I was able to stay. So usually I start out with a hat. Sometimes I pull that off during my run, stuff it in a pocket, and I'm good to go. Same thing with um, stuff to wear on your hands or warmer socks. On a cold day, I'm going to go with something like a mitten where I can keep my fingers all together and warm. On a warmer day, I might wear something like a glove that's going to give me, a little bit less temperature protection when I don't need all of that. I do tend to wear like a heavier and taller sock during the winter, no matter what I'm doing. And then, just touching on a little bit of safety there too, it's best to have, if you're driving to the place that you're heading for your walk or your run, it's best to have extra warm and dry gear in the car, something to change into. It's also great to have snacks in the car. And then also, if you happen to be like a late night or early morning walker or runner, having a flashlight or a headlamp of some sort that's easy and light for you to carry is going to be super smart. You want people to see you when you need them to. Okay, that was a lot. How about, Jillian, any gear questions or any favorite bits of gear that you tend to rely on yourself? Yeah. Yeah, the lighting I think is a key thing to consider. So, okay. Shall I move on to the plan portion? So we've got gear, plan, and motivation. Yeah, not wearing cotton before. I think, there's an odd, I think it's almost a generational thing here where like we were all taught to wear cotton because it's this natural fabric. Um, but it turns out it's really not a great idea for a lot of movement related things. And, especially when you're beginning to walk or run, the last thing you want to deal with is chafing. So sticking with the fabric that wicks well is going to be a good idea. Okay. All right. So we've talked about gear. If you are getting this video in your email and you have questions about gear, don't hesitate to send them to me. Okay, so we're going to move on to the plan portion. So what I mean by this is actually two parts. So there is a training plan, which is kind of a formal thing, and then your personal plan for how you're going to deal with your training plan. So as a beginner walker or runner, you could just head out the door, right? You could make a decision that you're going to walk or run some number of days per week. And just maybe that's enough to get you started. Often, though, it's very helpful to have some sort of plan that's a little bit more formal. For most beginner walkers or runners, those plans are going to look like either like a walk and rest approach or a walk and run approach, depending on if you're starting walking or starting running. They're never going to just send you out sprinting. So if either a coach or a plan ever tells you to like go fast from the start, you need to like quit with them, do something different. So for walking, for example, I'll make sure that you guys get this link. Berkeley actually has just a little advice about starting a walking program that suggests if you're a beginner, walking briskly, beginning with 10 minutes a day for the first 3 weeks, and then slowly increasing the time you're walking by 5 minutes per week until you can walk about 30 minutes per day for 6 days per week. That's a lot of words to describe a fairly simple program, which is okay. So you can find ideas like that online. If you're a beginner runner, you might go online to find free plans there as well. Hal Higdon has free 5K plans for beginners, intermediates, and advanced. There, you'll also be able to find, resources at the local library. One that I like is called Another Mother Runner, or that's the name of the company that publishes a book called Train Like a Mother, and you can find training plans and books that way. Having a paper training plan or something that you can refer to that way is going to be great for self-motivated folks who are trying to figure out how to sort of stagger their workouts through the week. There's also good apps for things like this. Strava, for example, is an app that will track your mileage, the place that you're running. You'll have a little map when you're done, and your pace. It's sort of like a social network for outdoor folks or movement folks, because you can invite your friends to check out your stats, or you can keep them private if you're that kind of person. Something like Strava can also act as like an electronic checkbox telling you that you've done your workout for the day. That's actually how I generally use my sport watch, is just like I have this long list of workouts that I've done over the years. I don't often look at the stats for them, but it just reminds me that this is a thing that I do. This is how I make my life. I want to be outdoors. There's also apps called C to 5K, Couch to 5K. That's a beginner level running app. I love this one called Zombies Run, where you're listening to the app as you're doing the workout and the zombies chase you at some point. That can be a really fun one for moms with kids who want to be moving with their kids. The bonus of the apps is that they're easy, they're usually cheap, and they'll talk to you from your phone. So they'll probably be beeping or talking to you when you want to start your walk or your rest or your walk or your run. I find that apps are great for pretty self-motivated people who maybe have a tight schedule where they want to just have their app on their phone and like hit the thing and go for their walk or their run over lunch. Okay, so those are apps and paper training plans. However, most of us often end up needing some company or accountability as we're starting a new practice, a movement practice, and this is where something like either a meetup group or a training group might come in. In Bend, you can find all kinds of casual meetups or casual interest groups in a bunch of different places. Facebook, if you search for like hiking group Bend or walking group Bend, running group Bend, you'll find any number of groups like that that are free and will most likely welcome newcomers. You can also go to the meetup pages and find there's several groups on Bend Meetup. There's a lot of group runs in town. If you just Google Bend group runs, you'll find organizations like Cork, the Central Oregon Running Club. There's also one called BARF, the Bend Area Running Fraternity, that have, do different things. They have different goals, different races they're training for, sort of a different demographic per group that shows up for that. We also have an amazing resources at COCC with community education and with our local recreation centers, Juniper and Larkspur, pardon me, that offer really cheap groups and classes. What I've found though, and it's important to keep this in mind, is that if you're a beginner at sort of a beginner level, you might be more comfortable in a class as opposed to an existing group. And the reason for that is when you're in a class, you guys are usually all beginners together and you end up with buddies who are in the same place and at the same level. If you're coming into an existing running group, for example, those guys might all be training for an ultra and maybe you're just not quite ready for that. So it's a little bit harder to parse out what groups you're going to be comfortable in. Whereas like if you can find a class, usually there's a good description of what kind of level class it is, and then it'll be more comfortable to start. By way of example, when I have a running group that I'm starting, the things that those group members end up with are a solid structured training plan that helps people sort of accelerate from basically the couch to running a 5K. We have 2 in-person workouts a week. We have online and email support between me and all of the runners. We usually have some kind of, central group thing, whether it's a Facebook group or a Slack page where we can all be talking to each other and helping to motivate each other. We make it very deliberately fun. I coach with tons of foundational info about either walking or running, depending on the kind of group. We usually get coffee after our workouts, so there's excellent social time. And we usually have like a goal race or a goal distance that we're training for and a celebration after that. Groups really provide the company and accountability that a lot of beginner movers need, and it helps those people go from being a non-runner or a non-walker to a walker or a runner. So you could think about that as another option. And I'll just drop in here that my Learn to Run Bend, which is my midlife women's 5K training group, is going to start March 16th this year. And it trains for 9 weeks and goes to we train for the Happy Girls 5K in Bend on May 11th. If you have questions about that, you should email me afterwards. Okay, so those are a couple options. Finally, if a group option really doesn't work for you, you're not where you feel like you need to be to start a group. Maybe you don't like other people. Maybe you need extra help. Maybe you're looking for kind of one-on-one accountability. Then you could consider something like private coaching. I coach beginner movers specifically. It's really my passion. And if you're a runner who's maybe looking for something beyond a beginner level coach, then there's really truly an abundance of coaches in Bend, and you can find more at rrca.org. That's a certification board for running coaches, and a lot of us in Bend have that certification. Okay, so Jillian, any questions about the idea of a training plan? Are there any don'ts you have for planning? Can you ask that question differently? Things you don't recommend doing. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Excellent question. Yes. So, okay. Wow. I didn't pay her to ask that question, but that's an excellent question. So probably the biggest thing as a beginner to not do is have an idea in mind, have a very fixed idea in mind of what it looks like to be either a walker or a runner. When I have beginner runners come into groups, they often have this idea that they have to be running a 5-minute mile for 25 miles right away because they keep seeing all these amazing elite runners we haven't been sprinting past their mailbox like 2 or 3 times a day, right? So instead, the important thing is to really start where you're at. Be compassionate towards yourself. Don't choose a daily goal and maybe a slightly longer term goal that are really well within your wheelhouse that you know you can fit into your schedule. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But especially I want you in your first walking or running workout, you should be able to breathe comfortably and even be chatting comfortably with, if you happen to be lucky enough to go with someone. So that's the critical thing is don't bite off way more than you can chew in the beginning stages of this. You should be able to find either on your own or with the help of a coach, a beginner level training plan that fits for you. Okay. Does that answer your question, Jillian? Okay, awesome. All right. So that's the kind of more formal training portion of the plan portion of this. But there's also sort of your personal plan. And this might be where my health coaching sort of background is useful. My goal is to really help you adapt this training plan to your life, because that's usually the sticking point is like, oh, I have this cool plan, but how the heck do I make it work around my crazy life where I'm working and I have kids and, I have to be places all the time and I have other priorities. So, and this is kind of what I was getting at just now. You have to think about what is realistic for you. How many days per week are you actually available to do the thing? What times during the day are you available to do the thing? And when do you have the energy to do the thing, right? That might really vary by day, and it certainly varies by person. I really like to get my workouts in first thing in the morning because then I can check the box on the day and move on. And it makes me careful to do workouts that are going to give me the energy to get through my day, as opposed to overcommitting to something where I know that at 9 a.m. I'm already going to be too tired to do work, right? Other people maybe are squeezing in workouts over their lunch hour. Some people really want the head clearing aspect of a workout after a long work day. So they get home from work, they go for their walk or run, and then they can arrive home and be present to their family. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. You might also be thinking about what your long-term goal is. Is there something you can aim towards that will be motivating? Is there an event that you're creating yourself that you're aiming for, and how far out do you need? by way of an example, like a 5K training group is training for a 5K, which is 3.1 miles. And for a beginner level runner, I'm not going to really allow them to run that 5K without at least 8 or 9 weeks of training ahead of time, depending on where they're starting. That's the length. My Learn to Run Bend group is a 9-week training group. You might also need to be thinking about where you'll walk or run. This is, again, part of your personal plan. Are there any parks or great places to walk or run near you? Jillian, if you have any suggestions, if you want to pop them in the chat, I'll speak to that in a minute. So it's great if you can walk or run from your house. A lot of us have that ability in Bend, but certainly not all of us. If you're choosing somewhere to go that isn't just out your front door, you'll probably want to make sure that that place is easily accessible, safe, maybe dog or kid friendly, depending on what creatures you're bringing with you. Motivating, we'll get to that in a minute. And then also possibly well lit if you're needing to do sort of a morning or an evening workout. A number of people in their intake forms asked about places to go. And so Jillian's suggesting Shevlin Park in the Old Mill area. I love Shevlin for when Shevlin is clear of ice and snow, it's a wonderful place to take either a walk or a run. It's really easy to do an out and back on the paved road there, or you can do a little loop or an out and back on the river down in the bottom of the canyon. There's also trails that go along the ridges up there. Shevlin can be a difficult place once it gets snowy or icy because that's a really cold canyon, so it tends to be slick longer than other places. The Old Mill area, which Jillian suggested, is a great option, along with, let's see what else. So the Old Mill, Pine Nursery Park, and the Larkspur Trail in particular are things that Bend Parks and Rec actually clears during the winter to make space for walkers and runners to use them. So they're not usually like super high on the priority list, so you might have to wait hours or maybe even a day or two before they get cleared. But if there's been snow on the ground for a while, you can pretty much guarantee that Pine Nursery, for example, will have been cleared of snow. Pine Nursery is on the east side of town, and it has a 1.4-mile loop, and it's flat, so that's great. The Old Mill is both lit and pretty flat, so that's another good option. Usually you can get from the Flag Bridge, which is right dead center in the Old Mill, all the way down to at least the Columbia Bridge, sometimes to the Horse Bridge. Beyond that, as a walk, you can also usually get to the Colorado Avenue Bridge from there. That's the bridge right next to the Whitewater Park. So those can be great places during the winter. I'm less familiar with the Larkspur Trail, but it goes from the Larkspur Rec Center up to Pilot Butte. So those are things that are cleared of snow in the winter. As I mentioned, Shevlin Park is great when there's not too much snow. Riley Ranch is a new park that's flat. It's in a big meadow. It would be a great place right now to go to for sure, where things are still very clear, but it can also be a great place to take snowshoes in the winter. And another option might be the Deschutes River Trail from Sawyer Park and north from there. All of those places that aren't plowed are going to be great most of the time, but if things have started, if the snow started to compact, or we've been through an ice or rather like a freeze thaw cycle, then they're a little bit less desirable. Okay. Finally, getting back to some personal plan stuff. It's also useful to think about what kind of obstacles are likely to come up in your typical week, and have sort of a backup plan for those days. A backup plan might be something like, I'm gonna cut my workout from 30 minutes down to 5 if it's really yucky out, or it could be, I'm gonna get back at it tomorrow. It's okay to plan to miss a few workouts, especially during the winter season and especially during the holidays, where we know that we're gonna get distracted either by the weather or maybe by family coming into town. It's best to be forgiving at that point and be like, okay, my sister's coming into town for tomorrow, for example, and I know that I'm not going to get my typical runs and skate skis in, but I am probably going to go for a couple dog walks with her near the river, and maybe we'll go for a hike one day if it stays this warm. So the important thing is to not hold yourself so rigidly to a plan that you end up feeling like you failed. Whew. Okay, finally, last part of your personal plan is really about your mindset, and we touched on this a little bit earlier. It's important as a beginner to be real and gentle with yourself about where you're starting. Know that, people who are returning to movement after a long time or just really starting to move tend to move more slowly and at shorter distances than folks who've been doing it for a long time. That's okay. You have to start where you are. It's also important to remember that there's going to be hiccups along the way, and that when something happens like that, you don't get your workout in, you cut your workout short, something like that. This is information, not failure. What you're learning are your own preferences, the things that are going to help you get outside, that are going to keep you from going outside, and then you can work around that stuff. So when that stuff starts to happen, and maybe you start to notice a pattern in those things, this is when you can ask yourself what kind of help you might need to create that sustainable movement practice. And you can kind of go back to these things like having other people around, some kind of reward. Maybe you're working with a coach or a group. Maybe you need a more robust plan, something like that. Okay, that's basically the plan portion of this. All right, Jillian, any other questions about sort of your personal plan for getting moving? Okay, nope. All right, so the last thing, we talked about gear, a plan. Now we're going to talk a little about motivation, my favorite topic. So, Jillian, would you put in, I know you and I have talked about this already, but would you put in the chat what is motivating you to start walking or running this winter? Because I think it would be helpful for other folks to hear. So those who are listening in the aftermath of this, be thinking about what is motivating you to get started walking or running this winter. Your answer to that question is your big picture why, your why that will motivate you to start and continue moving. Okay, so Jillian is sharing with us that she has a desire to be healthier and engage in activities with friends and family. So her big why is really about feeling healthier and having, active time with friends and family. So once you've seen this video and you're listening to this portion of it right now, what I want you to do is write down your why, put it on a piece of paper. And then tonight, I want you to flesh that vision of that out. What does it look like, for example, to be healthier or to be spending this time with friends and family? If you can write that out in as much detail as possible, that will be helpful. And then that might be what it looks like right now. What would you like? What is your ideal vision of what a regular movement practice looks like in 3 months or 6 months or a year? Pick an interval that feels good to you. So I'm thinking about a health coaching client of mine who was really motivated by the idea of keeping up with her kids. And so her big why was, over the span of her life, she wants to be able to keep up with her kids. And when she was thinking about her year vision down the road, based on where she was right now, her vision for herself was that she wanted to move with her family at least twice a week. And, in a year, that might look like that they went for little walks and jogs together because she had fairly young kids. But then she was thinking, like, maybe 5 years down the line, we spend 1 day a week up at the mountain together, skiing or snowboarding. And so that vision was really compelling to her and helped motivate her activity on a regular basis. There is actually research that shows that the more time you spend fleshing this vision out, the more likely you are to actually reach your goal. It can also be great to have a coach to discuss this with, like somebody who can help you flesh out this vision and be asking more questions and then help you stay accountable to that vision. Okay, so that's the big picture. The next question is this. As far as like the daily of continuing to move, you also need to be thinking about what's going to motivate you on a daily basis to keep walking or running and sticking to that training plan. So Jillian, if you have ideas about that, go ahead and pop them into the chat there, and I'll talk about a couple things while we're waiting. I am a big proponent, and I think we all want to get to this like seemingly very zen place of being internally motivated all the time. I am a big proponent of being externally motivated until you can discover that internal motivation. There's no weakness in that. We have to start somewhere. So things that often work for people are setting up your movement sessions so that you are going with a buddy. It might be that it's an in-person buddy or or it might be a friend at a distance or a family member at a distance where you're getting on the phone and you're spending, 30 minutes a week talking to each other during your workouts. Um, it might be that you have a particular playlist or a podcast that you love to listen to, and you only do that when you're out for your workout. Um, I find it really motivating to walk or run in new, interesting, pretty places. I often, go for my kind of typically weekly workouts right out my front door, but I make an effort to get to some new or different place once a week. It still might be something that I've been to before, but I don't get to Shevlin Park every day. I get to it maybe once a week or maybe once a month. And it's just super motivating to have a new place to go to. That can also be helpful as the seasons are changing too. Like in the fall, I'm always looking for like the best leaves. And so I go to different parks to do that. Pardon me. And then also, I love that, Jillian, you're speaking to this here, kind of talking about rewards to some degree, like maybe at some particular interval of workouts, like you walk or run, here you're saying go for a walk run 5 times. Jillian's going to get herself some new tea. I love that idea, especially in the winter. I am so motivated by coffee that like if I'm going for a run or a walk with a friend, we're going to get coffee afterwards. So I totally get that. But sometimes I've had runners who like, they successfully completed 2 weeks of workouts. And so they bought themselves a new piece of gear. I love that idea. I also think we downplay this too much because we are not very good about asking for help. When my runners are reaching the end of their training program, I encourage them to bring their family members to our second to last workout before they run their race. And so at sort of the finish line of the workout, their family members are there with like, pom-poms and cowbells and posters. And that's a really fun way for people to support you. And people want to do that when they see that you're doing something like this. So there's no reason not to do that even really informally. If you're having a hard time kind of getting out the door on a regular basis, like maybe your partner meets you on your return walk and walks the distance with you, or if you're walking a circle, they're meeting you at the halfway point, or I don't know. I mean, I've definitely utilized that like as I was training for longer events where I just needed a little break from like the mental crush of it, and had somebody do something silly for me somewhere along the way. So I would argue that rewards aren't motivating and they don't make you a weaker person or a weaker walker or runner. We want you to enjoy this movement practice so that it becomes sustainable. Enjoying a workout practice means that it like equates to continuity, right? And consistency. And so that you'll get going from there. So really it's to your benefit to be making your workout fun from the beginning. If your big why and your daily motivations are somehow based in like shame or shoulds or deprivation, it's probably not going to work. Continually flogging yourself isn't something that you want to keep doing, right? So if you're looking for a path to lifelong fitness, you really have to find a way to make it something that you want to do regularly. And like I said, start at the beginning, making it fun, continuing making it fun through the middle of that. And even as you're getting to like whatever your goal is, you want that to be fun too. So this might be where having a group or a coach comes in, where we can all be supporting one another and making it this like fun, silly, happy thing that we do during the week. Okay, Jillian, any questions about that motivation piece? Okay. Love the idea of encouraging support from family and friends. Definitely makes a big difference to trying to achieve goals. Absolutely. Yeah. I have a runner in groups who will just say to her husband, I'm going running tomorrow. And like just that is enough to motivate her because then she knows that he's going to check in with her the next day. So it can be that simple, or it can be this kind of ornate thing. I did just have this really happy situation in my fall 5K training group where I had a woman who had never run before. She was training to run for the first time and getting married a month after the end of our training group. And so her fiance showed up at the finish line with like a poster and a bouquet of flowers and like all this stuff. And she ran across the finish line right into his arms and like burst into tears. And it was like one of the best things I've ever seen. So, getting friends and family involved in something like that can be really valuable. Okay. All right. So that was kind of a whirlwind. I'm I'm going to go back to our earlier question and see if I managed to convince Jillian that I was right about this. So, okay, Jillian, what do you think? Is it true or false that you need good gear, a plan, and motivation? Is there something else? Did I forget anything? Do I need to like alter the premise of this? Okay, okay, no, she says true. Okay, I didn't pay her to say that. All right, excellent. So that is basically the content that I've got for you. So Jillian, thanks for being here and sort of being the foil for all of the questions. And for those folks who couldn't make it tonight but are getting the video, I'm glad that you requested it. If any of you are in a position where you're grappling with really how to initiate your own movement practice, let's chat. I always have on offer a free 30-minute one-on-one health coaching chat. You can either reply to one of the emails that you got from me about this event tonight, or you can find me on my website, which is stealingunlimitedhealthcoaching.com. If running is eventually your goal, I would love to have you in my upcoming training group, which is called Learn to Run Bend. It starts Saturday, March 16th. We meet twice a week on Wednesday evenings at 6 p.m. and Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Over 9 weeks, we're training for the Bend Happy Girls 5K on May 11th. And right now, I have a $50 discount through New Year's Eve only. So it's only good through the evening of December 31st. That's $50 off a $300 training group. It's the best discount I ever offer. So you want to grab that soon. If you have questions about it, feel free to email me back. I'm happy to answer any of that before you sign up. So, okay. I will make sure to get this video to you guys. There's a couple links I'm going to send you as well, so that you've got some more resources in front of you. One is this page from Berkeley about how to get started walking rather, and then also a Ben Bolton article about good places to go in the winter to walk or run. So anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for participating. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off the video. Jillian, if you want to hang out for a second, I'll be here. Anyway, good night. Oh, there we go.